Donna Brazile was the interim chair of the D.N.C. And she took over for Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This was during the 2016 elections, obviously. During the primaries, a lot of folks, including us here at the Young Turks, said that the D.N.C. was clearly favoring Hillary Clinton. We had plenty of evidence right out in the public, the way that they tried to minimize the debates, put them at times they would not be watched very much, the polling booths that were closed in places like Rhode Island and Arizona, which made no sense, as the Democratic Party was rightfully complaining about how the Republican Party does voter suppression. There was plenty of evidence out in the public. And then, unfortunately for Donna Brazile, we found out through WikiLeaks that she had leaked questions during the debates to Hillary Clinton's team. At first she denied it. Our own reporter Jordan Charton was the first one to notice that and ask CNN about it when the WikiLeaks were released. He was also the first one to question Donna Brazile about whether she did it. She denied it at the time. Now she has admitted that she did do it, and she had said earlier, quote, "It was a mistake I will forever regret." So we were right. She did in fact leak those questions, and she has admitted that. But today she admits far, far more. It turns out that the primary was in fact absolutely, positively rigged. This is the person who was the chair of the DNC. Now listen to what she says. She says, "I had promised Bernie when I took the helm of the Democratic National Committee after the convention that I would get to the bottom of whether Hillary Clinton's team had rigged the nomination process, as a cache of emails stolen by the Russian hackers and posted online had suggested. I'd had my suspicions from the moment I walked in the door of the DNC a month or so earlier based on the leaked emails. So," she says, "I followed the money. My predecessor, Florida Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, had not been the most active chair in fundraising at a time when President Barack Obama's neglect had left the party in significant debt." So now you're gonna see overwhelming and clear evidence here in a sec that not only they rigged it, but how they rigged it. But here she's explaining why they rigged it. So, and I'm sure that the folks at the DNC and the Democratic establishment are going to be furious with Donna Brazile. And given that a lot of the progressive camp was already furious with her, I think that this is a courageous act. She's not gonna have many allies left, but the truth is more important than that, and at least she has shared it today. And I know that a lot of you will think she should have shared it earlier. I understand that, I certainly empathize with that, but it is really important for us to know. And here she is saying Wasserman Schultz didn't do her job. That is a heavy blow to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. She must be livid today. But furthermore, she says Barack Obama had neglected the party and left it in significant debt. That is another bold statement. And she knows, she was there, she saw the numbers. In fact, in this piece in Politico, she shares the numbers. So let's keep going. She says, as Hillary's campaign gained momentum, she resolved the party's debt and put it on a starvation diet. It had become dependent on her campaign for survival, for which she expected to wield control of its operations. So there you have it. So the party is in terrible debt, according to Brazile, because of Wasserman Schultz and Obama. And Hillary Clinton says, well, I could give you the money, but there's gonna be strings attached, and I'm going to exercise control. So she went on to say, Brazile did, Debbie was not a good manager. She hadn't been very interested in controlling the party. She let Clinton's headquarters in Brooklyn do as it desired, so she didn't have to inform the party officers how bad the situation was. How much control Brooklyn had and for how long was still something I had been trying to uncover for the last few weeks. So Brooklyn is Hillary's campaign headquarters. It is now absolutely clear that during the primaries, the DNC was actually being run by Hillary's headquarters. It doesn't get any more rigged than this. So look, a lot of people tried to influence the general election, and I'm still livid over that. But no one influenced the primaries and rigged the primaries more than the DNC. I wish it weren't so. Republicans will jump on this, and I'm very saddened by that. But the way to prevent that is not to cover up the truth. The way to prevent that is to not rig it in the first place. So, but there's more devastating revelations here. She explains, by September 7th, the day I called Bernie, I had found my proof and it broke my heart. She said, the Saturday morning after the convention in July, I called Gary Gensler, the chief financial officer of Hillary's campaign. He wasted no words. He told me the Democratic Party was broke and $2 million in debt. Actually, they were in far bigger debt earlier before Hillary Clinton's team injected some money, and again with the attached provisions that they now run the DNC in the middle of a race where the DNC theoretically is supposed to be neutral between all of the different Democrats running, and they were not neutral because they had literally, in this case, been bought. But even so, by the time that Donna Brazile takes over, and it's now after the convention, they're still in $2 million of debt. And Hillary's finance chair explains that to Brazile. And she goes on to explain, he described the party as fully under the control of Hillary's campaign, which seemed to confirm the suspicions of the Bernie camp. The campaign had the DNC on life support, giving it money every month to meet its basic expenses, while the campaign was using the party as a fundraising clearinghouse. Now that goes to a second really important revelation. The first part of that sentence, of that paragraph, is already devastating. If you thought the election, the primary election was rigged, you were 100% right. So by the way, going forward, still there'll be a lot of people some who will be disingenuous, but some who will not have seen this confession and admission by Donna Brazile. And they'll say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory that it was rigged. And a lot of the mainstream media, I'm waiting for their apology. So when we talked about the evidence that was already available publicly as to why it appeared that the D.N.C. was clearly favoring one of the candidates over the others, the rest of the media treated it as, look at these Bernie supporters, this Bernie camp making these wild allegations. They were wrong. They did not treat it with the credibility that it deserved, and we were right. And that matters. And going forward, when you say that the election was rigged, they'll say, oh, come on, are you saying that? It's not us, it's the head of the DNC who says, yes, I was there, I saw the numbers, I talked to the people, it was definitely rigged. But the second part is as equally important. They used the DNC for money laundering. Now it's not illegal, it's money laundering in a legal way, but for this gross amount of big donor money that they flushed through the DNC, but eventually to Hillary's campaign. This is also something that we reported on. To be fair to Politico, Politico had reported on it earlier as well during the campaign. And she explains how they funneled the money through. Under the FEC law, an individual can contribute maximum of $2,700 directly to a presidential campaign. But the limits are much higher for contributions to state parties and a party's national committee. Individuals who had maxed out their $2,700 contribution limit to the campaign could write an additional check for $353,400 to the Hillary Victory Fund. That figure represented $10,000 to each of the 32 state parties who were part of the Victory Fund agreement, $320,000 and $33,400 to the DNC. The money would be deposited in the states first and transferred to the DNC shortly after that. Money in the battleground states usually stayed in that state, but all the other states funneled that money directly to the DNC, which quickly transferred the money to Brooklyn. Bernie never had a chance when it came to the DNC. They were already doing money laundering for his opponent. I'm not sure there's ever been a primary in this country as unfair as this one was. In general elections, there have been a lot of dirty tricks. And don't get me wrong, in the Republican primary, for example, in 2000, George Bush and Karl Rove did terribly dirty tricks with robocalls that were malicious and racist against John McCain. But they did not control the RNC as thoroughly as Hillary Clinton has controlled the DNC. So yes, there were terrible dirty tricks in plenty of primaries, but no primary, as far as I know and this admission goes, was anywhere near as rigged as this primary in 2016. If you believe that at the time, you were right. And all the people who were skeptical were absolutely wrong. So She explains that Politico did break that story at the time, and when the Politico story described this arrangement as, quote, essentially money laundering for the Clinton campaign, Hillary's people were outraged at being accused of doing something shady. Now, in reality, as she explains, they knew exactly that that is what they were doing, but they pretended to be outraged in public and in the press, and when they did, a lot of the press was cowed and didn't cover it as aggressively. Their control over the press is another scandal. But that's for another day. Let me keep going on this story. Donna Brazile continues to explain, yet the states kept less than half of 1% of the $82 million they had amassed from the extravagant fundraisers Hillary's campaign was holding. Now, if they funneled 99.5% of the money to Hillary, I think that it is fair to call that money laundering. Now, it's not, again, in this case, it doesn't happen to be illegal. I think our campaign finance laws are disastrous. I think we've legalized bribery in 100 different ways, and this is one of the ways. But was it funneling and laundering the money through the DNC and eventually to the Hillary campaign? Yes. Okay, the party chair usually shrinks the staff, Brazile explains, between presidential election campaigns, but Debbie had chosen to not do that. She had stuck lots of consultants on the DNC payroll, and Obama's consultants were being financed by the DNC too. And Brazile explains that because that is part of the reason why they were broke. During the elections, you're supposed to power up. You hire consultants theoretically to help you win elections, although Democratic consultants almost never do that. They lose all of the close races, and they've lost the House, the Senate, the presidency. They lost 69 out of 99 state legislatures, but the consultants get rich either way. But you're supposed to power down in order to save money so you don't go broke in between elections. But Obama and Wasserman Schultz said, no, don't power down, keep going. Keep paying our Democratic consultant friends. So they took and they took and they took. And some of you gave money to the DNC. They took that money, I don't know what they did with it during the off election cycle. What were we telling you on the Young Turks throughout? It's the Democratic consultants and lobbyists that are the real powers behind the DNC. They're the ones that are now attacking Bernie Sanders supporters and Keith Ellison supporters. They're the ones who attacked Keith Ellison in the first place. They're the ones who are saying, do not look at our budget. Because if you looked at the budget, you would know that most of the money is going to those corrupt Democratic consultants. And now this is another case where we were proven right, and the revelations show you that it is in fact true. Now, they explain about the agreement. So Brazile actually found a written agreement between the Hillary camp and the DNC. She said the agreement signed by Amy Dacey, the former CEO of the DNC, and Robbie Mook with a copy to Mark Elias, the lawyer, specified that in exchange for raising money and investing in the DNC, Hillary would control the party's finances, strategy, and all the money raised. Her campaign had a right of first refusal of who would be the party communications director, and it would make the final decisions on all the other staff. The DNC also was required to consult with the campaign about all other staffing, budgeting, data, analytics, and mailings. Complete and utter control of the DNC by one of the candidates running in a primary. No election has ever been so rigged in US history. So now it doesn't mean, I want to be clear about this, that they went and changed votes. Now, some of you believe that, and we've got to get further proof of that, but this is not the issue here. They rigged it in every other way. The communications staffer to the DNC is working for Hillary Clinton behind the scenes. The finances are all going to Hillary Clinton. Everything that was done at the DNC was done at the orders of one of the candidates, to the discrimination and bias against all of the other candidates, including Bernie Sanders. And now if you're saying, well, maybe it was after the primaries and during the general election, which actually would be normal. During the general election, the candidate that has won then used the party to help that party's leader win. That is not what happened here. So one final piece of clarity. This victory fund agreement, Brazile says, however, had been signed in August of 2015. Just 4 months after Hillary announced her candidacy, and nearly a year before she officially had the nomination. They have, in so many ways, ruined the Democratic Party. Now, who in their right mind is going to donate to the DNC? given this level of corruption. But I want to defeat Republicans. I am a progressive. So I believe that the progressive candidate is better off. I think uncorrupted candidates who don't take corporate PAC money, who don't take lobbyists, are way better off. And yes, you should definitely give to those specific candidates. But the party needs infrastructure. It needs to be an actual fighter for progressive causes. It hasn't been that for a long, long time. And now the corruption that is revealed is so thorough that you can't, that donating to the DNC, to this day we can't see where the budget is going. To this day, the same consultants that ripped you off before are ripping you off today. Who would give to that organization? These corrupt people inside the DNC have destroyed the Democratic Party. They have taken and taken and taken. They've taken all the money and they robbed it blind. Now, when Democrats lose, they turn around and blame progressives? Are you kidding me? It is 100% your fault. All you cared about was taking the money out of this, and people gave their hard-earned money to help progressives win. And you didn't do that. And at the end, through all this corruption, what happened? You lost to Donald Trump anyway. There's no one else to blame. Now the former chair of the DNC explains, yes, it was the DNC. Yes, it was the Hillary Clinton campaign. This ends almost all debates on this issue. It was corrupt, it was rigged. They purposely picked Hillary Clinton. And if we had a fair election and a fair primary, perhaps we could have had a different candidate. And most importantly, a different president. These people didn't care about progressive ideology or priorities. All they cared about was money and their own personal careers. And now the result is we have Donald Trump for president. I can't think of anything more shameful. This is exactly what we're going to end at the Democratic Party. It is time for progressives to take over. Enough with corporate Democrats. They have ruined any chance of progressives winning in this country. They must step out of the way immediately. Everyone involved in this should, of course, be fired. And Obama, who helped destroy the Democratic Party in this case by accruing all of those debts, and then saying, no, keep paying my consultant friends, then installs Tom Perez as the leader of the DNC. Now you trust Tom Perez? You trust the people running the DNC today? Are you kidding me? You have to get rid of all